This is Critical Nonsense, our high-lowbrow show about culture, science, and tech. This week, Joey asks us about the power hidden inside Dungeons and Dragons, and Aaron asks us about the difference between smooth jazz and chill electronica.
Woo! I wonder if you were always how much. This is what Joey sounds like.
This is what an Aaron and Crash Bandicoot sounds like.
and this is what an executive producer and synth queen, Jess Vander, sounds like.
Hi, this is Jess.
The smooth synth stylings that I have a feeling we'll be getting into.
You should have been like, wow, Jess.
So
I can't make synth sounds. I don't have that capability.
I have your backup. I cannot produce synth.
I love it. So, do we have a house to clean? Do we need a ShamWow?
One thing I wanted to talk about, one small housekeeping bit that I realized we never actually spoke about, but was something that we were excited about. The fact that our shows are on YouTube for any listeners with hearing impairment or any sort of auditory accessibility issues means that our show is closed caption on YouTube. So the full episodes are there, and because of the power of YouTube's algorithms and language processing, all of our voices are transcribed by the YouTube machines. So if you or someone you know that you think might enjoy the show but has accessibility issues around auditory processing, it is available in that format. So yeah, we just wanted to share that.
Woohoo! Yes. Welcome.
No other housekeeping. No, certainly no
False.
Corrections department, right?
False. Corrections department. There is more housekeeping, Joey. Tell the people about the thing you did.
Wait, the off-white paper?
Yeah, come on. They want to know.
The people want to know. We just released a new off-white paper around organizational purpose. I think it's pretty good. It is certainly extremely beautiful. Our design team did an awesome job. They produced it in like an ebook format. So there's like little bits of movement. The team did the photography on it. And I think hopefully the ideas live up to that. But you can download it at progressbysylvain.co, I believe, but we'll put the link in the show notes so you can download the off-white paper. You can find it at sylvain.co as well. And hopefully you enjoy it if you read it and you're interested in learning more about how organizations can sort of work through change management in order to, be better and whatnot.
And
it's
thank
free,
you.
Right?
It's free.
It is free.
Free 99 is a good
Favorite
pricing
price.
strategy. Yes. And thanks to the folks over at Kindred for being great collaboration partners on it too.
There'll be a talk. Yeah,
yes.
I'm doing a talk next week, which my imposter syndrome is already kicking in, but we're doing a talk with some folks, Afdel Aziz, who also just wrote a book around purpose called Purpose is the New Cool, I believe. And so next Tuesday, the 20th, we'll be doing just like a live conversation at 5. You can go to our social pages or Kindred social pages and get the link. That is also free.
Nice.
Wow.
Nice.
Cool.
We're out here talking.
I think the house is clean now.
This is a clean house.
Nice.
So now to the nerd stuff.
Woo!
Yeah, nerd stuff. Ready for nerd things? I am.
Yeah,
Joey?
Nerd thing. I've alluded to this, I think, on the show at some point, but I've been playing a lot of Dungeons and Dragons over the course of this pandemic. I had played it a little bit before the pandemic, I joined some like friends who had a game, and they're like, we all play and you don't play with us. You want to come? And so we would go like every 3 months, we would play for like 4 or 5 hours. And then the pandemic hit and we couldn't see anyone, and we had this like campaign going and characters and stuff like that. And so we were like, oh, I guess we'll just, play once a week, because what the hell else are we doing? And
hey, Joey,
yes.
For the uninitiated, synopsis of what it is?
I mean, I'm probably going to use the wrong terms. Aaron, you correct me. Dungeons and Dragons is a tabletop role-playing game, although tabletop, I think, is no longer necessary because we've been using all kinds of digital tools, and there's like a lot of technology that enables you playing it remotely now, like D&D Beyond, Roll20.net, these like other platforms. But the idea is basically that I believe it was created by Gary Gygax in the 70s. And the idea is just you make up a story and you use dice as a means to like determine whether you are able to accomplish the things that you're trying to make up live. And so you have different characters that can have like different races in the game, being like elves, dwarves, humans, orcs, things like that, that have different abilities, as well as like different classes that also have abilities, like a fighter or a paladin or a wizard or, a ranger, things like that. And so you basically just make up a story with your friends and try to roll some dice to decide how good you are at doing whatever the things that you're trying to make up. But the more and more I've immersed in it and sort of like dug into some of like the content online as I tried to learn to be able to play more and better and get, more engaged in it, the more and more I've realized how powerful it is as a platform. And we can talk about some of that, but what my question for y'all is how powerful is Dungeons and Dragons?
So I don't know about you guys, but the dragons that I've come across are very powerful, and they've hurt me very strongly and hurtfully. No, I joke because I'm a big Rick and Morty, not huge, and I feel like it's kind of passé these days to even say it, but I'm a Rick and Morty fan. Like, we watch that show quite a bit, and there's so much in Dungeons and Dragons that borrows from other entertainment and just like pastime art forms. Like there's a very strong element of improvisation that is like very, very much a part of D&D that is also in the DNA of Rick and Morty. I could go down that rabbit hole very, very easily, and I probably will. But I think the thing that all of this sort of gets to is this sort of essence of imaginative play, escape, world building, and true fantasy. Like it is a game that only exists in the instant in which the players around the table are present and can give themselves over fully to the world that they're creating moment by moment. And I think that yes, it's really cool to have this sort of just like improvisational thing, but what's really powerful is how much imagination it actually unlocks for folks who oftentimes let their imagination dwindle after childhood. And I think the power of unlocking imagination is the power that like literally changes the world. So I think that for a long time we've been underestimating what the nurturing of that imagination could do for us. But you've been playing D&D for quite some time, Joey. You've been a really long fan. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny in that like I knew about it when I was a little kid because a woman my mom worked with, who my dad would like sometimes help with like plumbing, and like one of her kids would like occasionally watch us. They were like 10 or 15 years older than us, like things like that. But she had these twins, and I knew they were into this game Dungeons and Dragons, and I had no idea what it was, but I was like, I thought they were like cool, and I was like, I want to play with them, and my dad was just like, it's too complicated. You can't play Dungeons and Dragons. And I was like, harumph, like, I mean, you make me watch all of these like fantasy movies and things like this, like, why can't I play this game about those things that you seem interested in? And like, that is like very my dad of just like, it's too complicated. Like, don't worry about it. Like, I'm not going to do this. But I never played it until I was whatever, I don't know, like 3 or 4 years ago. And then like seriously for like the past year and a half, I guess. But this like idea that you're talking about of imaginative play and sort of like removing yourself from the bounds of technology, like you can use technology to intermediate it, right? Like if you're literal or you have a hard time like imagining spaces or processing things verbally, you can have a map. And so like technology can do that now when we're remote, or if you were in a room, you could like draw it out, things like that. But like what you can do in the situations is like not defined by a physics engine. It's defined by like, can I think of a thing to do? And then I roll a set of dice to see if I can do it. Like, can I convince this person of a new religion? Can I like, like pick this lock and do this thing, or like create some weird scenarios, and you roll a dice and see like, oh, I rolled well. I get it. Like it's probabilistic, but it's chaos. And to your point of that thing being sort of unbound and having to be there and present in the moment in a time where being present and in the moment is like a thing that, people are writing about, people are talking about, right? Like that idea of like distractions and how long is our attention span and all of those things. It felt like this like really exciting, like weekly, I play on Wednesday nights, like at 9:00 until like midnight or 12:30. Which it feels really late, but I'm like, I don't care. Like, this is like a really fun thing that I'm doing every week. And I'm like, I'll suck up the torture of being very tired to tomorrow and deal with it. But like your point about unbounded play, I have a guy that I used to work with who just yesterday I saw Gabe Miller. He was like, he used to be like a CTO of some startup, or like, like firstborn if you're in this world, like and then he moved into like business development and was in agency world for a long time and left his job to start like a company teaching kids how to play D&D and like guiding them through these experiences. And he has all this stuff on the website about like educators have been talking a long time about the value of D&D, of teaching like verbal skills, imagination, improvisation, mathematics, like story building, like all of these things that you can get from the game of like understanding probabilities and like what a roll means and all of these things. And I was like, like I hadn't been thinking about this as like an educational tool for children. I was just like, this is like a really fun thing to do. And all of a sudden it sort of like stretched this thing that I was already feeling pretty good about into like something even bigger. And it kind of like took me back and was like, why, did we just relegate it to this place in society, culture, whatever, because it was like a nerd thing? Or,
No.
like why did we get put down?
Yeah, okay. I feel like I have the answer to this because it's my personal experience with it. Because when I grew up, my older brother played with his friends, and to be honest with you, I was young enough to think they were just like making stuff up. Just like everything was just made up completely, and they were just like, like all of this system had been conjured in their minds, which it wasn't uncommon for my childhood, because that's a lot of what we did. We had like this mystical forest that we created in our minds and had like a communist society in it. It was very confusing. But in that time, my understanding of Dungeons and Dragons was it was super loose. It was just like, generally, it could be any kind of imaginative improv game. And then in my adulthood, especially in the last several years, hearing a lot of people starting to play, when I looked into it and heard more about it, I was like, oh, it's all like, it's actually in this rigid existing universe and structure of fantasy that I don't understand. Like, orcs and what an orc is known to some people, and I am not one of those people. Or like, you mentioned the name like paladin earlier, Joey, and like that is a specific type of person role something, but like it's almost like a field to maybe like off of the Tolkien universes, or like there's a whole basis of like fantasy knowledge that I think is really intimidating to people, and especially for a game that is supposed to be about play and improv. It also, like you're saying, has a ton of structure. Like you said, there's rolling and what your class is and the abilities that it gets and how many gold you can keep to pay for a shield that does this. Like it's improv and it's make believe, but it's not. And I feel like there has to be like there are walls up for many of those who don't play. And I have to say, I also started playing in earnest during the pandemic and changed my mind somewhat, but definitely still feel like a lot of it is over my head. And I feel like for a lot of people, the nerddom of it, I feel like is tied to something like this. I don't know if either of you have like thought of it that way before either, but there's some shut doors, I think.
Yes. I mean, it also is, so it's deep. There's so much knowledge that those who like game masters, like really good game masters too, they don't need the book. Like the main book is huge and all of those different rules are so intimidating. But I have a close friend, for example, we play board games once a week. And he can learn whatever game we're playing and teach it to all of us in a day. And he loves that because he loves systems. He loves figuring out how to navigate and succeed in systems and like what the weak spots are. And he really enjoys knowing something that is inaccessible. And I think that there is a part of that which is this sort of slightly rarefied and legendary status of D&D that make it something that people know about, but that there is a gate attached to it. But one of the other things in that has sort of changed over the past 20, 30 years is the changing status of the nerd. Like computers are, it's always childish Gambino because the internet, but like because computers and the internet and everything like that, nerddom went from being what we saw in Revenge of the Nerds or something like that from National Lampoon to Mark Zuckerberg, where it's like outsider versus billionaire. And all of a sudden, if you get into nerd stuff and you can have access to it if you just give it time, you can have a lucrative life. You can have an amazing life. And so just the status of the nerd no longer being fundamentally denigrated in pop culture, I think has allowed for D&D to have broader appeal while still maintaining its low accessibility, which is it's an interesting tension that it's sort of moved through.
What's interesting about it, and to your point, is like it is complex, but it's not complicated. And I think what's interesting is like you can go in and play and have fun and not understand everything about it, and you slowly over time you pick up more and more, and you can like get more out of the experience and begin to understand what you like, more things you can do. But if you can get like the basic structure, if someone explains it well to you, it's not that complicated. But then it's like over time you're constantly learning more and more things, to your point, because there's like so many people who have been like deeply obsessed with it, like in that like Japanese otaku, right? Like what is it, like more than a hobby, less than an obsession, right? Like that's what otaku means. And like there's a lot of people who are sitting in that space around Dungeons and Dragons who have just been like creating and creating and creating for 40 plus years. And so there's like they're constantly evolving like what the rules are and like, you know, changing the character dynamics of like how many points you get and blah, blah, blah. And so there's like so much happening, but like the simple dynamics are, and it, to me, I've always wondered like, or always, I've been wondering if it's sort of like in this like American anti-intellectualism that we have this streak of that Dungeons and Dragons fits there because to your point, like it is accessible, but is not easy to get in.
Yes. And I think too that those who sort of to the nerddom point, I find that it attracts people who are quote on the margins, others, misfits, like people who don't feel mainstream or don't identify primarily with mainstream entertainment or content. And like that is partially because of the incredible like creative openness that the game allows you to have, even within its rigid structure. So, I mean, there are plenty of other tabletop RPGs that allow you to do, I guess that use those three ingredients of like imagination, consequence, and boundaries, and it sort of uses all three in different ways to make the game interesting every time and different every time. But when you can start to challenge, and when you are with other people in different games, start to challenge cultural norms that you realize that you either bring from your country of origin or from your just your background in general, and you all of a sudden see somebody like flip that on its head, and you get to play in a world in which that's no longer the case, or where we finally understand that like gender is non-binary. Like those sorts of things, when thrown into the mix, have really strong implications outside of the game. And I think that to the point, you know, the main question of like, what's the power of Dungeons and Dragons? It allows you to rethink the system that we live in. It lays it a little bit more bare so that you can at least play around and speculate of what if this thing weren't the case? And what are the consequences of that, good, bad, and otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to me. Like the three things you outlined, I would just add one thing to it that I think you said imagination, consequences, and boundaries. And one other thing I would add is empathy, because you're having to put yourself into if you're really playing, you're trying to inhabit a character that is not yourself, and like lean into that and be like, this isn't about what I would do in this situation. I created a character. What would this character do? And is training on that. But like those four things, like which one of those four things is not relevant to being like a strategist or or you know, some other like creative knowledge worker, right? Like imagination, consequences, boundaries, and empathy is like, those are kind of like the four big ones, you know, like, and that idea of leaning into the, and, you know, there was the point about the other that made, I had this moment. So I started watching on YouTube while I'm doing dishes and whatever, Critical Role, like the second season or second campaign, which is just they say like, a couple of nerdy voice actors playing Dungeons and Dragons or something like that. And it's like people who do cartoons and video games and anime and stuff, they do the voices, but one of them is really into Dungeons and Dragons and got all these people into it. And they have, I mean, hours. And like each episode is on average about 4 hours long. And they have
a lot of dishes.
Like 4 million viewers in some cases on these YouTube videos, plus like whoever was watching it on the Twitch live stream originally. And it was like, oh, you're not like, as much as this is like an other thing where you may not know someone in your life, it's like the digital component of this means these people are making a pretty significant amount of money before, going from being like like struggling voice actor. Maybe they weren't struggling, but just like voice actors, sort of like certainly not like wild status within Hollywood or anything like that. And all of a sudden 4 million people are tuning into them playing these games, and all of a sudden they can like make a living and a career off of playing this game. And one of the guy who's the dungeon master in a live episode that they did, I don't know, 3 years ago or something. I'm like way behind in this process, but he was like very nervous after like a live thing where people came, like 1,500 people came for 4 hours to sit and watch these people play Dungeons and Dragons and are like cheering and clapping and like on the edge of their seats. And at the end, he's like very nervous and he's like talking in front of everyone. And he was like, "This is the future of storytelling." And I was like, what? And like it just took me by surprise in the moment where I was like, the future? And I was like, well, first of all, I've watched like 120. I watched, this was like episode 29. And if they're all 4 hours long, it's like 120 hours in. And I was like, and I've been watching it, and literally no one going into every single episode actually knows what's going to happen because there's so much chaos and everyone has agency that's at the table. Like the DM is not controlling all of the things that are happening because the dice are involved and everyone can have intentions, but you have to respond and improvise and do all these things. And I was like this is like the complete inverse of scripted content, but it is also not like reality content where it is like highly produced and manicured or anything like that. And I was like, oh shit, like is this the future of storytelling?
So I can tell you, I love RPGs in general. Like I love video game RPGs. That's kind of increasingly over the past few years has become like a very happy space for me because of the narrative, because of the fantasy, because of the like magic. I struggle with playing D&D partially because I chose to be a wizard the first time I played. That was dumb.
That's so hard.
So hard. Stupid hard.
Yeah,
and everybody
all
was
the
like
spells.
Yes.
It's like what's your charm person? I don't know. What's your you gotta, what's it called? Casted Joey, help me.
Tasha's hideous laughter.
That sounds about right. I mean, I was literally sitting with the book and I was like, nope, can't do this. This is not a video game where I can where there are certain rules that are fed to you. But the other thing that I struggled with is actually the thing that I actually love about it. It's just something that I can't do with other people. And that's when I do creative writing. If I'm writing fiction stuff, that's what it feels like to me when I'm alone. That sort of going into the unknown, not knowing where the story is going to go and letting the story reveal itself to me is the way that I've always written nonfiction stuff since I was a kid. And I could spend hours and hours and hours and hours writing stuff because I just didn't know where things were going to go next. And I didn't know, why this person would interact in this situation a certain way. I struggle so much with it being a social environment with doing that with other people because I just I could totally just sit at home and roll the dice and write and I would actually love it by myself. But with other people, I'm like, I can't, this is too much to hold in at once. I can't understand. And are you really taking care of your character? Would they really do that? Come on. You just did that because you want to do that. And that vibe was all right, I'm just going to sit in the corner with a beer. I can't, I'm out. But I appreciate it. And I think it has so much value. And a lot of the other games that I like, physical board games like Gloomhaven, are they wouldn't exist if it weren't for D&D. And they all they borrow so many of those fantasy tropes like you were talking about, Jess, with certain fantasy things that are a thing that other people know and I don't really know, but there's they are a thing. An orc doesn't fly. Don't watch out now.
Right. Yeah.
But specifically there's some other RPGs. There's one that's really good called Shock. And they bill themselves as social science fiction. And it doesn't have a game master. It's truly like a book that you write together, essentially. And I was at a gaming conference a couple of years ago with the writer, and he was talking about how he came up with this and what rules he wanted to break of both RPGs and science fiction, and force people to actually come into this world without those constrictions, and to like figure out how to navigate them. And again, he paid homage to D&D. So like with all of this, I'm like, the power of D&D to unlock imagination is kind of like the 5 Thor stones. What are they called? Spirit stones? Help me, Marvel.
The
Soul stones.
Soul stones. Thank you. Oh,
no,
I'm so embarrassed.
No, the soul
that's
stone
one of the
is
stones.
one
That
of the
is
stones.
one of the stones. What?
Infinity stones.
Infinity
Stones. Thank you.
Guys, I literally went to
there. We got
Disneyland last Friday, and I went to the Marvel's Avengers campus, and I couldn't remember this. I would be lost without you, so thank you.
Yeah. I think
I was wrong, so.
to your point, what's interesting is D&D and Gary Gygax took what J.R.R. Tolkien did and platformed it. Like, essentially, they platformed it, and then so much of the content and the video games that we know today are all like spawned out of that obsession, either in like people who like, even you talking about Rick and Morty was like Harmon was just into D&D when he was a kid, and like so many things have been influenced by that, like secretly in this like background thing that you like did in your closet with your nerdy friends while you're like mouth breathing and pushing up your glasses. And then it's just sort of this subtle thing in the background. And I think that part is like interesting and weird. It's like the idea of like the comedian's comedian or the writer's writer is like the thing that only the people, like if you respect someone, the thing they respect is this thing. Like that idea is weird. And anyways, this brings us to Jess's Roll20 corner.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let's do a perception check on everyone's comprehension of this last, 40-minute conversation about Dungeons and Dragons.
30. We're only at 30. We're 30.
Okay. Sorry, I couldn't see behind the wire. We learned something. Oh, can someone roll for me?
Someone roll? I'll roll 20. Roll D20. You can do it in Google, and it does it for you. If you say roll D20, you rolled a 7 plus whatever your perception modifier is.
That's pretty poor. Yeah, you get modifier plus 2. Still poor. What we learned is that Dungeons and Dragons is something that has brought a lot of joy to Joey, but also definitely has a lot of potential for other areas in life. And if you're scared about breaking into a very gated and intimidating community of nerddom, never fear, because just like any game, it's a lot easier when you just start playing it. So get yourselves to a dungeon master, game master who is creatively inclined, and hope that they do all the work for you. Did it.
Well put.
Nailed it.
Well put. Yeah. Cool. Shall we talk about beep, 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 beep,
Jazz.
beep, 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 beep. That's Jazz.
When I found out, Aaron, that Maya Rudolph is Minnie Riperton's daughter,
I
immediately texted you.
Yeah. I remember when I got that text and I was like, yes, that is the second most awesome thing about Maya Rudolph. The first is that she's Maya Rudolph.
Yeah. Number 1 is that she's Maya Rudolph. Third is that she's married to Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yeah. She's
and they have 4 kids.
Interested. Yeah. Yeah. I love me some Minnie Riperton. And the story about like Minnie and Maya is actually pretty wild because Minnie Riperton passed away like very, very young. And so there aren't too many memories that they have together and stuff like that. But you look at Maya Rudolph and you watch her in Wine Country, which I think is a very underrated movie. Wine Country is hilarious, and she is brilliant in it. Oh my God. Like, we were just so lucky to have enough time away from them being together, like all of them. Anna Gasteyer is even in the mix over there. And then having all of them together in one movie, like, people slept on it. And Maya Rudolph was the champion of that slept on it ship. She killed it. She crushed it. She's amazing. I don't know what a slept on it ship is. I encourage you all to figure it out.
Don't get on board that ship. It is sinking. Get off the slept on it ship.
There's definitely an iceberg that it has or will run into because the captain is sleeping on the slept on it ship.
Well, with that, Aaron, that feels like a very nice icebreaker into your topic.
I love this. So that was really, really nice. Thank you for that marvelous introduction. I've been listening to nonstop as I've been working from home, electronic chill playlists on like Spotify and other platforms that I will not name. But
what are the names of some of those playlists, or do they explicitly have the phrase electronic chill?
This is really good. One of them legitimately is just electronic chill. That is Amazon Music. On the nose, friends. Some of the other ones that I've been listening to a lot: electronic glow, electronic rejuvenation, chill and electronic too. Okay, so they're all pretty straightforward. Yeah.
One of them, one good one would be dunce dunce zzz.
I wonder how they would spell that, and I would click it all the time because I'd be like, what is this one? They got me with electronic chill gaming music. There's some mellow creative Mario in that one.
Wow.
But, I thought like this is my mode, and it's the background music that I need to get work done during the day. And I mentioned this to Gretchen here at the company, and she was like, oh my God, I listen to it all day too. And then I talked to somebody else, and they were like, yes, that's all I listen to all day long from the minute I wake up until the minute I'm done working. And I was just blown away that this was A, that I'm so not unique, and B, that this is like consistently so many people's working music. And so in any case, I started talking to my mom about this a little bit, and she had no clue what I was talking about. And she just responded with electronic. You just mean smooth jazz? And it's like my brain swallowed itself. And it was just like, it was really, really jarring. And that leads me to my question for y'all today, which is, how are smooth jazz and chill electronica different?
This is the best analogy delivery system I've ever heard.
What in particular? What did I do?
Your mom's like, what? You just mean smooth jazz? Like, you just mean is like,
oh yeah,
the equivalent of the colons in the SAT analogy test.
Yeah.
You just mean
this is to this.
Yes.
I'm obsessed with that. I was so stuck. Can you repeat the question? I was so stuck on your mom. I don't even know if I heard it.
Yeah, so my question is, how are smooth jazz and chill electronic different?
Okay.
Trumpets.
The first thing I thought of was, wait, are they? And then, have you heard of Insane in the Rain music?
Insane in the Rain music?
No.
Yeah, it's this guy.
Oh.
It's this like American Filipino artist who rearranges jazz compositions from video game soundtracks. And it's like take the Me channel. This is like my favorite one. The Me channel theme music when you have a Nintendo Wii and you're making your Me profile character. There's this little sound that's like do 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 do
Yes, yes.
Okay, so this guy
That's
rearranged
a very
that
good reproduction.
It is.
to be a jazz rendition of this song, and it's so catchy. And I guess it's not chill. But then if it's that it's not smooth jazz. Like part of the smooth or chill of these comparisons, Aaron, it feels very critical. So maybe what I'm describing doesn't fit for this discussion.
This is a critical nonsense. This is a critical distinction. It's true because so chill there, and by the way, there's I think it's Cheddar or one of those like YouTube channels that has all sorts of like brain foodie type stuff. But they did a little bit of a yes, which is a good one. I like that one. Is a breakdown of what the YouTube channel Chill Electronic or Lo-Fi Hip Hop to Study by like what has allowed that to stay alive and be one of the top most YouTube channels around. But that lo-fi, this idea of like lo-fi hip hop and chill electronic are in the same bubble, which is that they do have, and there's a strong electronic component to them, synthesizers and whatnot. There is a low beat per minute sort of standard. I think it like kind of hangs at like 70 to 80 beats per minute. So it's like, it's slow, it's quiet, and then it's also typically literally a little bit, there's usually like an effect somewhere in there of like a fake record crackle or something that's going on in the background. Which, by the way, if you're listening to right, yes. But I just want to say, if you're listening to a record and it's crackling, that's not cute. That means your record scratched. So get a new needle or fix it. I know Les knows what I'm talking about. So this is different, and that's one like kind of style or genre of music that if you search for electronic chill on any platform, you'll get that same style of music. Smooth jazz is Kenny G and Yanni from 1992. Careless Whisper. Everybody knows.
That's not Careless Whisper. That's Kenny G.
Sorry, I always hold on. Breath. Oh God, this is so bad. Oh, One Breath. Is it One Breath?
I don't know, but that's like
Guys,
all I thought. When you said smooth jazz, I was like
Breathless. That's the name of the album.
Like maybe I do fuck with smooth jazz. Like
yes, but this is why the question struck my mom so hard, and she was just like, "Oh, you just mean smooth jazz?" Because in the early '90s and late '80s, like smooth jazz was absolutely like taking over the nation's radio waves. I know in Cincinnati we had 90.9 The Wave, and smooth jazz, as ushered in by Kenny G, is a very specific type of jazz music. It isn't the Herbie Hancock. It isn't the classic like Thelonious Monk. It isn't this sort of asynchronous jazz that we think of from the 1920s and forward. It is a very specific, synthesized, quiet, listen to love making sort of like song, like sound. That's what that was wrapped in. And so what I was trying to understand and what I wonder is like, is what both of those genres are trying to do the same thing, just to different generations of people.
Wow.
So
different tools.
I think when we first came into this, I was like, first of all, do I know anything in either of these genres? Like historically, I have like a nothing at jazz. Like I don't hate it, and I just like I don't want to listen to it, and I know it's become like this like signal of like, are you cultured? Like if you're just like, oh yes, I'm into jazz. Like there are people who are obviously genuinely into jazz, but it's like also like a little bit of this thing of like, yes, let me talk to you about jazz. But
wow,
I was like, I don't know if I know anything in these like camps. But then you saying that like made me think of those like commercials in the 90s of like the ones with like Enya, where it's like sail away, sail away, sail away. What was the name of that CD? Do you remember?
Pure Moods. It was Pure Moods.
Pure Moods. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Moods and vibes and easy listening. I have a playlist called
Easy
Classical
listening.
/ Easy Listening Yabish. And and it is just like things that I can write to because they're easy. And I think that easiness is like what does it. Like it's enjoyable. Like I enjoy the music in it, but it is like for a mood where I need to focus and it is not drawing like a large cognitive load to pay attention to it. And that, like, you talking about that, your mom discussing those comparisons, I was like, oh shit, it's just easy. Like, you know, like it's not asking a lot from me. Like Kenny G, like playing his alto sax, like it's not asking anything to me. It's just giving me Kenny G in my ear holes.
Yes. Well, the video, which we'll post in the thread or on the site, actually gets into what makes that lo-fi hip-hop playlist in particular so easy to listen to, or that channel on YouTube. And it is because the wavelength itself is kind of lower. So it is intended, like all the sounds that are in it are intentionally at a wavelength that will block out other sounds but not neutralize them. And then there's a consistency in the beats per minute that allow you to move from track to track without being disrupted, but things slightly change around you. And then on top of that, you have these synths. And usually, like, if you listen to a lot of this music, like, the synths are not, like, punchy orchestra hits from the 80s that are, like, big chords and, like, and they're not, like, sci-fi.
Tears for Fears.
Yeah. You're not going to, like, get these things that you're intended to pay attention to. That are intentionally supposed to pull you into listening to that specific sound. Instead, you get these warm pads that just sort of like sit there. And literally, if you look at a synth, it will say, like, let's go through your pads. There are like, how many different pads are in any synth card? Like, you got hundreds of them. But they just sit there and they fill out the sound with a nice, warm, easy, earhole filling warmth.
It is pleasant white noise.
It is pleasant white noise. It's going to be there, but it's not going to distract you. And that's why you don't hear like there's no lyrics, there's no singing. There's no singing in electronic chill. That's not a part of it. I did hear there's no crying in baseball when I just said that. I didn't. That was very Tom Hanksy of me.
I just love this idea of like an artist that's not needy and just like, I don't need anything from you. I just like made this thing for you to fuck with. Like, this is just a vibe. Like, get on board, get off board. Like, I don't care. Versus like the sort of stereotypical, like, sort of prima donna, like ego-centered artist is like, pay attention to me. Pop, 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 pop. You know, like, it's coming at you in your face.
Mm-hmm.
That's like exactly casual listening. It takes it to a whole new meaning. It's like a casual relationship between artist and listener.
It is. It's anti-pop because you're totally right. These artists today demand your attention, not just hourly, like within the sound, but also like in Instagram and on social and in all the other places that they show up. So like this idea that you have this anti-pop on the other side that is just like, do I know the name of a single artist that is in the chill that I've ever listened to for the past year in these channels? No. Like truly, I'm driven solely by the algorithm at this point because it knows this is where I need to be to get things done, and you don't have to ask anything of me. In that classical and easy listening Yabish soundtrack or playlist, it has the song from Reply All's like the greatest hold music ever in it, which is called Simplicity by Macroform. And it is like one of my favorite songs of the past decade, where every time it comes on, I'm like, oh yeah, this is like a fucking bop. Like this song is like, and also it's like, it is legit, like not asking anything of me. It's just like
It's like your friend who you're like at a party and like everyone's like talking and awkward and there's just like someone dancing in the corner and they just seem like they're having like a really good time and they don't care what you're doing. And
Yes.
it's like that. That is the song.
Yes. It is. The other thing that's interesting about it, in terms of it not asking anything of you, goes to our first conversation about like D&D, for example. True imagination requires so much attention, like and to then
Yes.
like and D&D in particular to think about those consequences and that all the damn spells for the wizards, like it's very mind filling, whereas this truly is intended to be just like a vacuum that you rest within. So not only do you not have like a singer whose voice you're like pulling out as a melody line, but you're also not, there's no lyrics. You're not hearing a story. You're not doing any of that. And so, you know, it's no surprise that you may like overhear some of this music at your like local cafe or restaurant playing. And I love the ones that actually, some of the playlists will be like, quote, vintage lo-fi hip hop or vintage chill electronic. And it's like telepop music. And it's basically any song that you heard in 1995 that was in a Levi's commercial. Like, that's basically Air. Oh my God, Air is definitely in this. So in any case, like, this has been around for a while, and this is like the next iteration of what Yanni and Kenny G and all those folks were doing. And I do wonder if we might see some sort of like formal, not resurgence, but formal codification and establishment of this chapter of our music. Because I'll tell you what, friends, it gets shit done. Vote Chill Electronic 2021.
So they are the same.
Wow.
They are the same.
They are the same. It was a trick question. How are they different?
Oh.
It's a lie.
They're not. They're not. Wow.
I think
Well, you
Karen
brings us to-
Powers.
are really easy to rap.
Yeah, Jess is It's Been Done corner. I don't know.
You did it. They're the same.
Look at that. That was effective.
Low cognitive load music just doesn't have the same ring as chill electronica.
We're going to make that playlist too.
Well, we did it. Critical Nonsense is a Sylvain production.
Recorded. That's it. It's just recorded. I don't know. I was waiting for it. It's recorded.
That's my favorite. I like that. That's what I like also.
As always, we want to thank our executive producer and low cognitive load friend, Jess Vander.
Interesting. Thanks, guys.
We'd like to thank our erstwhile but always present sound engineer, Alex Contel.
I'd like to thank designer Nora Mestrich for her chill beats and making everything beautiful.
And then we'd also like to thank, insert D&D reference here, Sarah Gilbert, Les Jacobs, and Tony Vong. Thanks, you guys.
And as always, thanks, Elen.
Sorry, Ellen.
Special thanks to the Backyard Club, my band that had one song that me and my cousin created after
Wait, what
work.
was the name of the band?
The Backyard Club.
Oh, that's
Not
good.
to be
That's a
confused
good
with
name.
the, it's really good, and it's not to be confused with the Backyardigans, I assume.
No, it was an actual club that we created where all of the people that we were friends with were in it until someone decided to make a competitive club, and then we were just vying to get each other into the different clubs with like pixie sticks and stupid
Yes,
shit.
you've got wounds from this. You've told me about this club before, I believe.
It seeded the wounds that were then later this was younger than that, but yeah.
Got it.
It started and it eventually sours.
Much like my special thanks, Dan Harmon and Harmontown, one of the co-creators of Rick and Morty. The Harmontown podcast used to do Netrunner and D&D, and the episodes were like 2.5 hours long. I don't understand or fully comprehend cancel culture, but I would be remiss in not acknowledging that he's got weird things that he's done or accused of. So, awkward special thanks, but aware special thanks. Started sweet, ended up salty. That's basically it.
The art is not the artist. I don't know.
Maybe, I guess. I also want to thank, just really quickly, special thanks to Chuck Mangione, because if we've got Kenny G and whatnot, Chuck Mangione can't be forgotten. Him and his trumpet, that is some smooth jazz. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I'd like to thank Carlos
Santana.
Aini. I don't know how to say it, but he's a guy who made all those songs, and you should listen to them in our playlist.
Love it.
I'd like to thank Critical Role for making hundreds and hundreds of hours of things that I pay attention to when I do my dishes and such.
Ooh. I'd also like to thank Joey's charisma check joke for not landing, but landing in our hearts.
Yes, 100%. All right, really quickly, I'd like to thank Stranger Things, because D&D, obvi.
Yep.
I'd like to thank Nier Automata, Persona 5, and Final Fantasy 7. All RPGs, amazing, get on it. I also want to thank and apologize to George Michael and Kenny G for mixing up Careless Whisper and the album Breathless. I had a moment. Please let me be. Cheddar, I want to thank you. Similar to Joey, YouTube, get on it, get lost in it, have your brain tickled. Your gray matter will take on a new shade of gray. Last but certainly not least, thanks, Mom, because that was a good shout. That was good stuff.
Yes.
Hold on. This just in. I'm getting a message from Kenny G right now. Hold on. I'll just hold my microphone up to my phone up to the microphone. Fuck you, Aaron. that was like it was a voice message. So
That's really nice of him. That's really nice and specific of him to send that message to you. Oh, I love it.
We have an ongoing relationship.
It's really nice. Thank you, listeners.
It's weird that he was listening in while we were recording this.
It's really good.
He's a powerful man. He's a powerful man. We don't know what he's capable of.
No.
He finessed the bag in the 90s, back up the Brinks truck to Kenny G's house.
Bazoom. I don't know what any of those words mean, but I love it. That's why I said bazoom. I don't know what bazoom is. I'm sorry.
Hold on. Kenny G net worth. Let's see. $100 million.
Oh, I need a soprano sax.
Oh my God. Kenny G is worth $100 million. Thank you to Kenny G. I love you all. We've done it.
Bye.
Bye, friends.
I made a joke about a charisma check in a meeting the other day, and everyone was like, "What?
What's that?"
I was like, "Well, he didn't roll high on his charisma check," and everyone was like, "I don't get it." I was like, "It's fine. Just ignore it."
Don't worry. Never mind.